Chicken Parmesan is one of those classic dishes for people who love breaded chicken, cheese, and a delicious tomato sauce. So basically everyone. The best news about this dish, it's exciting yet really simple to make. Whether it's just for yourself or others, everybody can enjoy it. So without wasting any more time, let's get into how I make chicken Parmesan. Here are all the ingredients going into my sauce. I throw my celery and onion along with a glug of olive oil into a cold pan and I set my heat to medium-low. I let my onion and celery sweat for about 15 minutes until that is all nice and soft, bringing out those sweet flavors. I add 1 tablespoon of tomato paste and I cook that for about 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, I make a well just like this in the pan. Now, before I add this next ingredient, I just want to say, just like any other savory sauce that contains anchovies, for example, Caesar salad dressing or Worcestershire sauce, I promise you won't be able to taste the anchovies in this sauce. These anchovies are just going to add a nice umami flavor to the sauce. Just think of anchovies as Mother Nature's little MSG spice shakers. In the well that I made in the center, I drop in my anchovy fillets. I break up my anchovies like so. Then I add my finely minced garlic. I stir the entire pot together and I let that all cook for about 60 seconds. This will cook the raw bite out of my garlic. After just a minute, I turn my heat all the way down to low. This will keep my garlic from burning and going bitter. I add my spices, which consists of 1/2 teaspoon of red chili flakes. This spice is optional depending if you like spicy sauce or not. 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of freshly grated black pepper, and 2 teaspoons of sugar to balance out the acidity. Now comes the tomatoes. I'm using San Marzano canned tomatoes. I always make sure my can says a product of Italy. What makes these tomatoes so special is that San Marzano tomatoes are grown in the rich volcanic soil at the base of Mount Vesuvius in Italy. And believe it or not, they do have a much superior and vibrant taste compared to other canned tomatoes, and even fresh tomatoes. If you can't find crushed San Marzano tomatoes, you can always buy the whole peeled and crush them with your hands until they are pureed, which is what I ended up doing. I also add 2 tablespoons of freshly chopped Italian parsley, as well as 1 teaspoon of dried oregano and 1 teaspoon of dried basil. I stir that into my pot with a splash of water and turn my heat to medium, bringing this all to a simmer. Once that comes to a simmer, I turn my heat to low and let that all simmer for an hour and a half. During that hour and a half, I continue to add splashes of water here and there as needed to get the right consistency that I'm looking for. After that is done simmering, I make sure to taste the sauce for any additional seasoning. Usually my sauce always needs an extra shake of salt, and maybe some more black pepper. Once your sauce is cooked and ready to go, it is all downhill from here. This meal can now be cooked and ready in a matter of minutes, so feel free to cook your sauce ahead of time or even the night before. This sauce can always be reheated without compromising its flavor. Now let's work on our chicken. I have 3 chicken breasts that I butterfly. Remove the chicken tender if it is still attached. You can always pop those into the fridge or freezer and save those for another dish for later. Using a sharp knife, I start slicing through the middle of the thickest part of the breast, and I work my knife down to the thinnest. And that should all just open up like a book. To even this all out, I cover my chicken with saran wrap, and I beat those down until the entire cutlet is even and about 1/2 inch thick. Generously salt and pepper both sides of your cutlets before you begin breading them. For the breading, I use a classic 3-tier breading station. I have flour, 2 beaten eggs with a splash of milk, and plain breadcrumbs sprinkled with a heavy pile of freshly grated Parmigiano Reggiano. Always try to use real Parmigiano Reggiano that you grate yourself. The real stuff will come in a whole piece and have a stamp on the edge. First we dredge the cutlet in the flour and then pat off the excess. Then we thoroughly cover it in our egg wash, then the breadcrumb mix, making sure to cover all the wet spots. I put that cutlet to the side and do the same for the other 2. Next I fill a deep skillet with about 1/2 inch of frying oil. I'm using canola oil. I set my heat to medium and I allow my oil to heat up for 10 minutes. I really want my oil nice and hot so I get those beautiful golden brown crispy cutlets. Once my oil is hot enough, the second I even lower that tail piece of the chicken into the oil, I should see a nice fizzy bubble. Always lay slowly and away from your body. Grease burns are not fun, and the pain from them does not go away quickly, so be very careful. Cook those for about 1.5 minutes on each side, or until the breading is nice and golden brown. I then place those on a cooling rack. You can also place those on a couple sheets of paper towel if you do not have a cooling rack. This is going to help the chicken drain that excess grease so that they can be nice and crispy. After my cutlets are done frying and they are draining on a cooling rack, I heat up a large pot of water and bring that to a boil for my spaghetti. While that is heating up, I grate some cheese. I like to use a good quality whole milk, low moisture mozzarella. Whole milk cheese will have a much more rich taste compared to part skim milk. And low moisture mozzarella as opposed to fresh mozzarella will help us avoid those wet puddles that fresh mozzarella tends to make. I top my crispy chicken cutlets with a pretty heavy amount of cheese. Under a broiler and in my second highest setting in my oven, I set my tray and I leave the door open while my cheese browns. I leave the door open since I don't want to cook my chicken breast any further to the point of them getting tough. Once my cheese looks something like this, I take the tray out. To my pot of boiling water, I add 1/4 of a cup of salt. Now that may seem like a lot of salt, but fear not, that pasta will only absorb as much salt as it needs. This is our only chance to really cook any flavor into the pasta itself. If we don't aggressively salt the pasta at this stage, it will taste pretty bland no matter how flavorful our sauce is at the end. All the Italian grandmothers out there will pat you on the back for this. I add 1/2 pound of spaghetti. We're going to drop in our pasta whole and give it a couple seconds for the bottom half to get soft and pliable. Then we're just going to twist and work in the rest of our noodles with a heavy set of tongs. Set a timer and let those cook. I let mine go for about 7 minutes. Once my pasta is cooked, I drain that and I immediately toss in a couple heavy scoops of sauce. I also don't want to add too much sauce because I want to use some of it on the breaded chicken. I really like how this all came out. Those cheetah spots on my cheese are like tiny little flavor bombs. And this was just an amazing dinner. Anyways, I hope you give this recipe a try. And if you liked this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe because I make a new video every single week. And as always, thanks for watching.